Hey guys, so this is the final video in this series. We're going back a wee bit from some of the previous videos to go into myths with regard to diet. First thing I want to go into in terms of a myth is macros. As we already mentioned, that there are three main macros in our diet: protein, fat and carb. There's an awful lot of talk about carbs at the moment. They are now the new bad guy when it comes to what you eat. You'd think that the devil himself created them to be able to stop you from achieving anything that you want to achieve as a result in the gym if you eat them. That's not true. And it's important that you do keep them in your diet, and it's important that part of a varied diet because it allows you to be able to enjoy life, really. It's very difficult to go out and eat in a restaurant and not eat carbs. And you will come across as slightly strange. Not that you really should give a shit about how people perceive you, to be perfectly honest, but at the end of the day, it's about being able to socialise with friends and with family, when you sit around a table to have dinner, when you go out for a meal, and being that person that has to have a separate meal cooked because you don't want certain things, or being that person that has to go to a certain restaurant or has to order strangely when it comes to a menu. It starts to make that whole social engagement a little bit more awkward. Unless that you're really resilient, it's probably going to mean that after a while, and the more you do it, the more you're probably going to want to avoid those situations. So it's more of a benefit to you, both personally and socially, to be able to continue to eat as normally as possible. So carbs come in importantly for a whole host of reasons, one of which is generally fullness. And if you remember back to a few videos ago, I mentioned how fats and proteins are important for you to feel full. And that's true. I'm not contradicting myself. They are hugely important to your overall fullness. Carbs do fulfill that role as well, and they do so in the form of fibre. Fibre is not a part of carbs, and you'll find it in whole foods again. In processed foods, you're not going to find as much fibre. It's also important then from a point of view of overall health, if you bear with me in this one, is that the other aspect of fibre is that it helps to keep everything functioning as it should. So without having that fibre in the diet, again, things are going to go wrong. And we want to make sure that if you're going to be going into a gym and you're training because you want to be healthy and you want to feel better, and having to strain is not going to assist in that overall healthy feeling for you, and more than likely is going to result in you kind of moving off the diet after a short period of time, just simply because it's not comfortable. So it's really important that it stays there for you. It's also hugely important for your energy, as I mentioned in a previous email to you, that the majority of our energy does come from carbohydrate. The sugar that is within carbs is broken down, and it's our body's primary energy source. So when we take that out, it will only be a matter of time before our energy does start to drop. You'll see small things like walking upstairs becoming a difficulty, just having the energy to do that. Day-to-day activities that normally you wouldn't think twice about doing, let alone going into the gym and trying to lift heavily or trying to run, you'll turn around and find a struggle. As I mentioned as well, certain people, myself included, will start to become a rather irritable git to be around when my energy levels start to go low. And it's what's commonly referred to as hunger, hungry and angry. It is your body's way of saying, I need food, I need carbs, I need something that's going to pull my energy levels up. And it's important that you can tune in to those feelings of fullness as well, and also of indicators that you might actually need something to eat because you're becoming a bit of a grouch. So again, it has an important role in everything. And taking one thing in isolation and saying it's wrong to eat that, or you shouldn't eat that, or it's bad to eat, is hugely incorrect, because we don't eat in isolation. Our species never evolved to eat solely one thing. We do well on a varied diet. and a mixture of different foods at different times of the year. Now we have an abundance of food that we can get generally through all of the year from different places, but it's still, our body hasn't changed. How it adapts and how it processes energy is still the same, and it's really important that we continue to vary where we get those foods from. So when you look at studies, or even better, TV shows where they take one person and feed them nothing but sugar, and then feed another individual but don't feed them sugar, and compare the two, they just don't work, because you and I are never going to sit down and solely eat a diet of chocolate bars or raw cane sugar all day long. It's just not going to happen. So it has to be looked at in a way of being able to look at the whole picture. And it always comes back to that. It is always about the whole picture and not taking one thing in isolation. And taking studies then where we look at taking two people who are doing the same amount of activity and are doing a different diet. But one person eats a high amount of sugar in their diet and one person eats a very low amount of sugar. They'll still lose the same weight, or they'll still lose weight. It's very difficult to say that they'll always be the same because each person's individual. But it is always about calories in versus calories out. If a deficit is there, they will lose weight. It doesn't matter if one person's eating an insane amount of sugar and one person's not. Weight loss will still occur. What we'll see the difference is again, health. Things like fiber, probably not going to be that present in a diet full of sugar. It just isn't there. It's not a whole food. Also just general energy, peaks and troughs in it, how they feel. The only issue with huge amounts of sugar in the diet can be if they trigger binge eating. So different people have different responses to different foods. So having a chocolate bar, having a Snickers, having a Mars bar maybe sets off of going on a huge binge and just continually eating. That's something that you maybe want to consider avoiding sugar then within the diet, because of the knock-on impact of consuming that one food group, rather than it just being a case of it's bad. It's not. So with diets, what we eat has to improve our health. Now, we're always really focused on improving our health in how we feel, how we look. That's what we generally tend to focus when we think about the gym and our health. But it's a much bigger picture than that. It also has a big impact upon our mental health as well. So when we're looking at diet and how best to put those together and what's going to work well for you, if you're in a place where you're constantly struggling and stressing about what you're eating, if you're in a place where you berate yourself and beat yourself up for having a chocolate bar, for eating something that wasn't within the meal plan, that's not healthy either. That it's a good sign that it's probably not the right diet for you, and that you need to adjust that to find something that works for you to help find your goals and achieve your goals, but also that you're not stressing over in the long term or short term. Also, carbs are hugely important in competing in endurance events. So if you are planning on being a long distance cyclist, triathlete, long distance runner, you're going to need carbs to be able to function and perform in those events. Just in general, don't even, regardless of perform well, you're going to need to be able to have a degree of carbohydrate in the diet in order to be able to compete and to perform in them and not sort of cross the line in a heap. They're hard enough events without making them harder by removing carbohydrate from the diet. It is true there are some really interesting studies in how fat can fuel performance athletes and performance over a long period of time. But even with those studies, what they found is that fat fuels, and we can actually get some really impressive results with fat and performance indicators actually going up, going past and beyond baseline, because our bodies generally store an abundance of it. It's a huge amount of energy in our fat cells, and that's its prime goal. Its primary objective is to be held back as a fuel reserve for when we need it. However, there's only so much of it that we can get in short bursts of activity, intense bursts of activity, and in the long term, once it's depleted, it is gone. So carbs become hugely important to be able to fuel that long distance and that long performance factor. And we need a combination of fat and carbs. And there isn't any endurance sport where you are required to win the sport by who stays out on the track the longest. Each endurance sport is going to be a case of who completes the length of a course in the shortest time possible. And in order to do that, you're going to be required to perform a low state of exercise at some point of it, and just continue steady state, and then sprint, and then maybe come back and sprint, come back and sprint. And it's going to go up and down, and your intensity will vary depending on that intensity. And certainly when it's high, you're going to need carbs to fuel that. Being able to sprint on a bike or sprint running is not going to happen if you don't have carbs in the diet. So when you are competing in something that is endurance based, a good rule of thumb is that we're looking at 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour of event. Now, that is a rule of thumb, and it is very general. So depending on what you're doing, you may need more, you may need less, in which case I'd probably suggest that you give me a chat, drop me an email, say to me the next time that you see me, and we can go into that in a bit more detail as to what's going to work best for you. But a good rule of thumb is 60 grams per hour of activity. So fats were the bad guys. I mentioned in previous videos where carbs are now, don't eat them. Fats were there back in the mid 80s and the early 90s. Fats were considered untouchable if you wanted to lose weight, and that still exists to a large amount. There is still a stigma with regard to fat and what to eat and what not to eat. Again, fats are important, so we don't want to cut them out of the diet completely, and we want to keep them there, but there is an amount that we can eat, and it's really easy to overeat and overconsume fat very quickly. Considering a small handful of nuts could potentially be half, if not all, of your fat intake for a day, meaning that you're going to be kind of limited to what you can eat for the rest of the day if you've already hit that fat goal. And that becomes a bit of a problem. So we want to always be able to control how much fat we eat. Even for myself, love cheese. And that would be very easy for me to go over my fat intake very quickly. And if I go over my fat intake, and I eat normally through the rest of the day, which wouldn't be unnormal, I'm going to have a much higher calorie intake for that day than what I'd want to. And as a result of which, the chances of me putting on weight, if I repeat that consistently, is going to be very, very high. It's going to happen. So we want to try and avoid how much fat that we take in on a given day. And we've already gone through what we would look for in terms of, we've already gone through some amounts and how we will work those out in previous videos. So I'd recommend, if you need to go back over that, if you have a wee look at those videos previously and how we set up a nutrition plan, be hugely beneficial for you to be able to work out where that should be. And if you want to know more, sure, ping me a line and I can turn around and point you in direction of some of the actual paperwork and where you can find out a little bit more for yourself exactly. When it comes down to fat as well, we need to consider how we absorb it, and we need to be able to absorb it in order to get the energy from it. And at the end of the day, we still do need energy. So our vitamins that are essential for us to be able to absorb fat are vitamins A, D, E and K. They need to be taken in the diet as well. And there's various sources of those. D being the sun. You could take a multivitamin. For more information on essential vitamins that you need to be able to absorb the nutrients from your food, definitely that's a very individual thing. It comes down to what you're eating currently. So by all means, do get in contact with me personally, because there's no point to being able to go into it in this video. There's just going to be too much information to be able to apply to you effectively. So that's it for a few of the myths surrounding nutrition mainly, and how to get the best out of what you want from your training. That's also the end of the email series. So next up, there's going to be a small test just to see what you can remember from what we've gone through so far, and just to give yourself a bit of a challenge to see what we've talked about and what you've learned over the last couple of days, and to be able to take that further forward into getting the results that you want from the gym and from your training. So until you get that last email, enjoy, and I'll see you soon. Bye.